Welcome to GameSpot Live. I'm Greg Kasavin sitting in for Scott Osborne, who reviewed Battlefield 1942 for us. There's a good chance you've heard of Battlefield 1942 before, because over the last few months it quickly became one of this year's most highly anticipated games. That's thanks largely due to a multiplayer demo that got out that just got people really excited. At first, Battlefield 1942 looked like just any other World War II themed first-person shooter, but in reality it's a unique, fun, and truly original game. Although it did ship a bit too early and has a few technical issues, for the most part Battlefield 1942 really deserves all the hype surrounding it. One look at Battlefield 1942 and you can tell it's supposed to be a World War II game. It has a realistic look to it, but it doesn't take you long to realize that it's not a realistic game at all. It's really just an action-packed, almost comic book style version of World War II, where any player at any point can take on any type of position, from medic to sniper and from pilot to tank gunner, and have at it. It's really a game that doesn't force its authenticity in favor of having fun gameplay. Though Battlefield 1942 supports an offline mode where you can play against computer-controlled bots, it's really the 4 different multiplayer options that are the main attraction. You can play games with up to 64 players at a time, though realistically a lot of servers running will have a 32-player limit. While there are deathmatch and team deathmatch options, the most popular online mode in Battlefield 1942 is Conquest, where 2 opposing teams representing Allies and Axis have to fight over control over different strategic points around the map. The maps are all modeled after famous World War II conflicts, and the Allied and Axis positions are likewise simulated as sort of small versions of what actually happened historically. So in some, the Allies might be on the offensive, while on the others the Axis are defending, and still others will require a mad rush by both sides to capture as many control points as early as possible. One of the game's interesting features is the ticket system, which gives a real consequence to when players die, but doesn't force them to sit out for a long time, like they might have to in other online shooters like Counter-Strike. Basically, the way the ticket system works is pretty simple. If your team runs out of tickets, your team loses. You lose tickets when individual members of your team die, but also if the opposing team holds a majority or all of the control points on the map. So basically, there's incentive to not die and incentive to capture the control points as quickly as possible and to hold them, basically forcing the other team to run out of these points so that your team wins. There are a number of different infantry classes available in the game. You've got the assault class, the scout class that's armed with a sniper rifle, a medic class, an engineer class which can repair vehicles, and an anti-tank class whose purpose is obvious. You can switch between these classes easily just by kind of dropping your backpack and picking up another, and you might notice some balance issues, such as how the engineer is really remarkably effective since he could just hop out of his own vehicle and repair it. Nevertheless, the different infantry classes do complement each other, and you'll find that most all of them will be represented on a single team. You might generally find that the infantry weapons in the game are a bit underpowered. They seem inaccurate and kind of weak, but that all just goes to show how important vehicles are to Battlefield 1942. The game actually features a whopping 35 different vehicles, all based on historical vehicles from the period. These include land, sea, and air vehicles, from aircraft carriers to tanks and half-tracks and fighters and bombers. You can pilot all these things either individually or with a crew. At first it may seem kind of ridiculous that you could pilot an aircraft carrier just all by yourself, or a huge bomber without any kind of crew to help you out, but you'll really appreciate it at times when other players might be elsewhere on the gigantic map you're in, and you could man the tank all by yourself and fire the cannon while moving it around. The game is very accessible. It uses basically the same controls for movement on foot as it does for movement in all the various vehicles, yet at the same time you'll really notice the differences in vehicle handling, and you'll really appreciate kind of the different strategic advantages that each one offers. The criticisms you could level at Battlefield 1942 are the same sorts of things you could criticize about just about any great multiplayer shooter. Since the game is new and popular and accessible, you might find that you're playing with a lot of guys who don't necessarily want to work as a team, might just run around killing their own teammates and frustrating things like that. But if you do get into a good game, you'll just really have a blast. You'll be able to coordinate and mount ground and air strikes simultaneously and perform all kinds of really exciting, daring assaults like that. It does seem as though Battlefield 1942 shipped a bit early. There are some issues with the sound, there are some graphical issues involving ATI drivers, and the game can suffer from lag sometimes. But there was already a patch out for the game the day it shipped, and that gives every indication that it will get to a point where it's perfectly stable online and as enjoyable as it has the potential to be. Already, though, Battlefield 1942 is a great online shooter that seems like it'll have a big, huge following for a very long time.